Welcome to Dutch Game Garden Incubation Program. Today we're talking to Nick and Stephanie of Game Drive. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We have a Q&A with you about the organizational structure of your company and also about your marketing approach to video games. Let's first start with your organizational structure, and for this we have Harold Warmelink, who will ask you some questions on it.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Harold Warmelink. I'm from Breda University of Applied Sciences, and I'm working with Menno on a study understanding basically the long-run gaming startup. So how you survive or thrive beyond the first 4 to 6 years of business. And I'm very honored and grateful to be able to ask you about this because Game Drive has just celebrated its 4-year anniversary. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yesterday. Yeah.
So Stephanie and Nick, basically what I first want to ask you, in your own words, how would you describe the core business of Game Drive at this moment? What is the core business?
Our core business is basically the general marketing for developers. So it's not only the PR side, but we're also looking on strategically putting their product on the market, making sure the message is good, talking with distributors to actually get it on their portal and optimize their store pages and such. So we're actually doing the overall marketing for a developer and being their advisory when they have questions and such.
Okay, yeah. So does that mean, just to get that picture straight in my head, does that mean you work mostly on a sort of game project base with individual developers or publishers or?
Well, we work only with development studios, basically. Mm-hmm. We have helped out a few PR agencies, but that was just on a small base. Yeah. What we basically do, they come to us and they have a question. I have a game and I want to launch it. Sometimes it's like in 1 month, but hopefully it's like a little bit more in advance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we actually look at what are the possibilities, how is, in what state is the game, and we were lucky to actually get a lot of development studios that first started in either an early access or have released and done a lot of post support. So for a few companies, I've been working for 4 years even and 2 years. Most of them are for the longer period. Okay. Just a few are project-based, and that's like 4 or 5 months.
Okay. And do you focus on the Dutch industry or internationally?
We have mostly in the Netherlands, but since last year, we've been focusing a little bit more on the international market. And now we have a few American as well. And we had a few like in several countries, but America is mostly, apart from the Netherlands, our business.
Okay. So yeah, just to get the picture in my head straight, basically a lot of companies come to you, so you have a nice reputation.
We've been very lucky.
Yeah. But it's a long-run relationship in itself. Yeah. It's a longer relationship, so you've also just been able to keep that relationship going beyond several titles.
Yeah.
Are they all entertainment games or different kinds?
Yeah, they're all entertainment games.
Okay. They come to you hopefully a bit further before the launch date, like 1 month. Hopefully like, what, half a year or a year?
Yeah, preferable 6 months.
6 months.
A year is fine, but then we can't do much every month. We can start building a little bit of a community, setting up the channels and such, and we can help through the development plans, look at how can we make the game suit a little bit even more to the target audience and talk already with distributors on opportunities to release on their platform. Okay. So when you have an idea, it is really nice already to be even a year up front. Yeah. So we can start a little bit, but then it's not as intensive as it becomes 6 months up front.
I see. So 6 months is sort of a sweet spot.
Yeah, for us
sort
it
of,
is.
Works well.
But we've managed a lot that just come like 3 months or 4 months up front.
Okay.
It's if it's a good game, we're not going to say bye-bye.
No. Oh, good. Yeah. And Nick, what's your role in this?
I provide insights based on metrics, data analysis for marketing efficiency, game efficiency. Everything in that process I report back on.
Okay, so are you involved in marketing very early on when the game?
Yeah.
Or is it more throughout the entire marketing period?
Throughout the entire marketing. I help Stephanie with the marketing campaigns. Mm-hmm. And during that process, I evaluate and collect all the data on the marketing effort. And when the game launches, I try to report back short term what goals are achieved and which positions should be adjusted.
Okay, so basically the marketing
The
performance, how
Yeah.
are people
Yeah.
responding,
Marketing performance.
how is sales going?
And it sometimes helps with the implementation because you've been very close to the process. A lot of times you sometimes work straight up with the programmers to actually help them implement the metrics. But like I said, we do general marketing, so we have like whatever questions developers have. If we have experience with it, we help them, or we try to get someone in that can help them.
I see. So maybe also working with certain partners, not just within your own organization? Is that what
We're
you're
starting to do that more and more. So we have like 2 years ago, we started working with, for instance, Gamers Network, when people want to do actually advertisement and such. So we work together with them. But mainly we've actually started as a company to get in people that are skilled at a certain area, like him with the metrics, so we can strengthen that position. Because my partner and me, we're pretty generic, more the strategic part, he's more the PR part. And then we actually get everyone in that has their own little skill expert thing that we want to get up.
So Nick, you haven't been working at Game Drive for very long yet? Is that what I
No,
understand?
but I've been working with Stephanie for a longer period before that. So,
Yeah.
Okay. You know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
I think 10 years maybe we've
Okay.
been working.
Yeah. So basically we're moving on a little bit from the core business already into your current organizational model, organizational structure. Maybe again in your own words, Stephanie, could you explain what is the current organizational setup, organizational design of Game Drive?
Well, currently we're officially a VOF.
Okay.
So my partner and me, we together own the company, and we work actually with full-time, actually with freelancers as much as we can. So either they work 3 days or 5 days or 2 days. Right now we have, I think, 3 people that are like every week at the office a few days, and we have a few that we just get by once we see a project coming by or it's near release that we need some help with something. And it's just a fast group, and we're starting to see if we can get it bigger, but
Yeah. Okay.
it's always exciting.
That is very exciting, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Is that a sort of 4-year itch? Like we've made it for 4 years. Let's see if we can grow.
No, we actually we get some good advice sometimes from accountancy and stuff, and from my dad actually, who's done a lot of startups. We actually put financial goals and goals on long-term relationships with developers, studios, and such. And when we hit them, we actually try to do the next milestone. So we actually did really well last year, and we started off really good this year. So now we're like trying to accelerate a little bit quicker.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary.
Well done, though. Very good. So basically, because I'm, as I already mentioned to you a little bit, I'm pretty interested in these moments of change in organizations, in startup organizations.
Yeah.
Would you say last year, maybe, since you mentioned it, was sort of a pivotal year?
I think 2 years ago when we actually got out, well, we do have that office still at the house, but when we actually got out and got in here.
You got an office in the building here.
Yeah, and basically that was a turning point, like, okay, now it's done being in your home, having a room as an office, which felt already pretty real, but now let's just go for the next step and actually get some more people in.
I see.
So
that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, we had already some freelancers working while remote, but then we actually really wanted to start getting a real company. So.
I think I see someone who really wants to ask a question.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So I was wondering, what are the main marketing channels you use for games? I mean, of course, it differs per game, but what are the main channels you use for marketing?
What we
games?
mostly see coming by is, of course, if it's a PC game, it's the Steam Hub. It's a big thing. And Discord, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. That mostly we're busy on those channels. And, of course, you have Instagram with a few and such. But it's... I think everyone almost has either Twitch or YouTube, one of the two, or Discord, or the Steam Hub, or the console hub somewhere. So, yeah.
And for instance, for like starters, I mean, our starters, let's just say we're not swimming in money.
Yeah.
Which channels would you say would be the ones that you get like highest results from?
The ones the closest to your store. So when I'm saying Steam up, because we have a lot of PC games that we're working for, when they're on Steam, a lot of players actually first look on the hub if the game is still alive, if it's what others are saying about it, if there's some features not mentioned on the store page, you're actually going to ask in the Steam up. So that's where the closest to the store is where we're the most active. It's also the easiest to get organically grow than if you're actually trying to get traffic towards your own channels that are not known yet.
Okay. Do you also do advertising for Xbox and PlayStation?
Advertising, we work with other agencies that actually do it, yes. So we have worked, for instance, for Verdun when they did their PlayStation and Xbox release. We actually work with Gamers Network to make sure that it was targeted towards players that were owning one of the two, reading articles about games on the PlayStation and such.
Very good questions about marketing, and this is your core business after all. Did you ever feel maybe 2 years ago when you decided to move here, or at some other point during the 4 years that passed, we're doing the wrong thing? Was there a moment where you realized this is the wrong strategy?
I think almost every year it changes a bit on the market, and I think last year I had a hard time. Even though we had some good results, we also had some results we were not happy with, at least not ourselves. It's because, I don't know, the big shots, there's a lot of advertisement money going on, and we had a phase that we could actually win a lot of territory also for the indies. And last year it changed a little bit, and that made it really, made the game a little bit harder, which is really nice as well, of course, as a marketer to get some challenges. But it did feel like once a setback, like, oh, everything you've been trying, you need to do something else now. So I think it was last.
Right?
I think it was last year. Yeah.
I think also because of the changes in the market, they're very quick to follow up. It's not like one formula you can apply 2 years in a row. It's constantly evolving and changing for us as a marketing company.
Right now, the privacy policy, or he knows everything about it, changed, which makes your metrics gathering and mining a little bit different as well, which is again a challenge that we'll have to overcome. Which of course is again when you hear it and you hear, oh no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. You're like, oh, what can I do? Because we want to do it with, we want to be there also for studios that are not swimming in money yet and actually help them to break through. But your resources are becoming more expensive in that case. So.
Interesting, huh? It's a very interesting example of how maybe we all think that technology drives change in this industry a lot. Actually, this is an example of how law drives change in our industry, right? Privacy law, very interesting. How many weeks until it takes effect? 2 or 3 weeks left?
28th of May,
28th?
I believe, 24th.
Yeah,
Just over 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
I don't know, something like that,
Yeah.
So we have like 2 weeks now to
Yeah.
get our game ready.
But over the past 4 years, any other drivers of change? Was it, so you briefly touched upon not technology or legal, but just the marketing strategy itself that doesn't seem to work or that has to change? New channels, perhaps?
I think specific for Steam, they changed their setup as well. I think 1.5, 2 years ago now, 2 years ago. Which also, well, it's still great that we have context and stuff, so you can still try to see and be a little bit ahead on what's going to change and stuff with Valve, but it also makes your game there a little bit different because it's becoming more and more a community-driven thing, which is really nice. But that means what we saw is actually that now with everyone putting games on it, that we see loads of DLCs and publisher games coming on it and actually breaking up the whole Steam store coverage. Which also makes it hard to actually push a smaller game up with just one banner to actually grab the attention instead of 10 titles. So,
New challenges just by
and that
in
was
the platform.
by the platform.
Gaining visibility.
But positive for Xbox have done the mixer is new. I think even last year or 6 months ago or something. It's becoming more a thing, and that's actually giving us a lot of advantages again. So it's every change either gives you an insight to actually do a little bit more, get some more room there, and other ones you have to change your plan and do something else.
Yeah. We have some more questions from the audience.
Hi, my name
Hello.
is Dan.
Hi.
First question is, how do you get your clients?
Right now, we've been really lucky for word of mouth. Actually, also in America, so that's really nice. We have went to Gamescom last year. We got like some people interested, but not really like that. It would be something for that. Like they wanted only the PR very quickly for 1 month. So we actually had to hold them all off because it's not really what we as a company stand for. But mostly just going to events, talking with developers, and then via mostly I get a call actually or an email saying, would you be interested? And then we ask the game, check the game, and then we get in contact.
Right, so it brings me to the next question. What types of games do you normally do? Is it a specific type or?
We don't do, at least not a lot, is mobile games. We do a few, but they're mostly from people we know close, so we can experiment a little bit more with them. We mostly do PC and console games, and that can be strategy games, that can be party games, that can be war games. It's everything actually. Mostly the more hardcore supported games.
And at which point in your company process as a developer would it be interesting to start talking to you? So is it normally that the companies are already there and they have some problems with their marketing, or is it before they start thinking about marketing?
A few come when they're like, oh my God, we should do marketing because we want to release this game in 3 months or something. But we actually, it's 50-50. We have a lot that, we have a few bigger companies actually that are asking us to help in their business plan and marketing plan, which is way up front the release, is that's more than a year. And we have a few that actually have an alpha version of the game. And actually, I think that's the biggest group. When they have an alpha, then they come to us either because they need Accelerate to get funding, or they want to have a really good plan on how they're going to release this because they think it's going to work. And for us, it's easiest when it's an alpha, when we actually can see something where this game is going to, but what we can still actually give our input in strengthening a little bit the marketing side of the game.
Okay. Final question, maybe most important. Probably not for me, but maybe other people here. Are you willing to do it on a rev share base?
No, nah, joking. We do 1 a year. And I'll explain why. What we do is we do like 80% paid, 20% rev, or a bonus situation, so people can actually feel that we're more involved, even though we do just as much if we get a bait, to be very honest. But we don't do just rev because we do not have enough authority in that to actually say something about the game. So when I do a rev deal, I actually want to say something about the game, the design, the process, the launch, everything. I actually want to have a vote as well. Mm-hmm. And when you come in the party later, you normally don't. So when we do a full rev share, I really need to get to learn the company, know the game. And then if the vibe is good and I feel the game has potential, then I do 1 a year just to make sure that I can still pay all these guys' bills as well. So, yeah.
Understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so because PC games are very, very vulnerable for piracy, do you feel that Steam is still a viable way to sell your game? Because like friends of mine released our game, and 45 minutes after their game was released, there was a downloadable version of their game on the torrent site. So for games who do not have online features, do you feel that Steam is still a viable way of selling your game?
Yes, basically. I've been working before having my own company as well in game business, and we were hacked, I think, a week before we went live. It was already out there. Different name, almost different game. In Asia, and it was a browser game. It had nothing to do with Steam at the time. When we see games going on GOG or whatsoever having a DRM-free version, we actually see quicker the hack happening than when it's on Steam. But that's mainly what I see, what's happening in my experience. I don't know the numbers or the facts and stuff which others have, but in our experience, it happens anyway. If you have a good game, they want it, and especially in Asia, we see a lot that it's copied a lot. So, Yeah, so I feel Steam is still a legitimate way to, especially as now the amount of players from China and such are actually growing on Steam. So even in the Asian countries, you see that they're actually buying as well through Steam.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Sabo.
Hi, nice to
I'm
meet
not
you.
really sure whether this is marketing or community building.
Mhm.
So I have a game, and for this game we're using a newsletter. And I wonder if you have any experience using a newsletter for community building or marketing.
Yes, of course.
Would you recommend it, or say you should use another channel? Because right now it doesn't work well, and I want to know if I have to be more patient and wait, or try something else.
I would need to know a little bit more about
Setup of
your
your
setup, but in general, newsletters work if you're not giving the news on all different channels, but just focus on a few. And when you actually have something to say, so just sending out a newsletter to send out a newsletter, which back in the day you did every month or every week or something like that. We actually just had a survey last week with one of the games, and they just say, please let me know if there's news, and not just to keep me opening up the newsletters to just see something and get their attention to the game. They actually want you to put something valuable in it. So maybe it's the strategy behind your newsletter that you have to rethink. I'm not sure.
So what would you say is valuable?
When you do an update, that's valuable to know for players, especially if they experience the issues and don't want to do it again, or if you're in a next stage of your game, or if you know when you're going to release your game, or if you have new features that you want them to give their opinion on. Stuff like that is valuable, in my opinion, to put in a newsletter. But just saying there's a sale and then also tweet about it and put it on Facebook and it's on your Steam store, that's overkill.
So basically what you're saying is if you put it on one place and put valuable content out, it would work.
For your own community, not to build your community. To build your community, a newsletter is pretty difficult, to be very honest.
So what would you recommend then?
A more organic viral place, and that's the social media these days. And so the Twitter, for instance, and such, or your Instagram. I don't know what game you have. I'm just
It's a
like
web game.
guessing here what your web game. And you want to traffic to your website, then I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Then I would definitely see if I would go to the mainstream social media and get some more towards your
Right.
website.
So you're saying for building a community, you should use the social media.
For engagement and
for
maintaining the
engagement.
newsletters are good.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Thanks.
you're welcome.
So yeah, it's really very pertinent questions about specific marketing topics and marketing insights and knowledge. How to do this. But I'm gonna guess here that in general, the advice you would give in terms of marketing is really dependent on the title and the company that's approaching you,
And the
right?
strategy behind it. Are you like, are you having this game and building a community to your company because you already have a whole lineup that you want to do in the future, or if it's just this one game to see if you actually are viable and can survive it as a company? It's already a different angle.
That's already a different angle, and then you're not even talking about the actual title. What is the title?
Yeah,
trying
and then
to
the channel
achieve?
choice is also, like I said, you first want to know your product, you want to know your audience before choosing your channel, and then when you have your channel, you choose either the strategy behind it, if it's either to engage your players or is it to actually get them back to your game, and it's engagement partially as well, or actually get new players.
Yeah.
It's also a different strategy per channel again. So
So there's no easy answers, I guess, right? I want to create a community.
not too specific.
No quick answers.
No quick
quick
answers. Then
answers.
I would need to know a little bit more about. I can give an answer, but then it could also be something else if I don't. So
has
it
to
doesn't
fit the
really
product.
work. Yeah.
And I guess also just goes to show how creative marketing actually also is, right? I mean, things change all the time.
Yeah, and
New
it's not even set on
channels.
stone. If I'm
No.
saying newsletters mostly for engagement and not per se to get new players, that's what I read, my experience, but maybe in 2 years it's different. And I actually have to go with the mark as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Let's move on to the next question.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Doron from Quackwa Games. 2 questions. One, why did you choose not to do mobile mostly?
Good question. I actually do for, like I said, people close to me. but as I feel I can't give the results that I want to give, I don't want to actually do it too broad. So I have done a few in the past, and I'm still actually working on a few, and we do everything there. It's just a totally different game. It's going really quick, and it's right now in an angle, and that's what I was just saying about the setbacks. I was just seeing it was so getting flooded, the channels of mobile, and actually getting reach there, that it actually gets you a little bit demotivated, and working out a new strategy right now, but I prefer to first test it again with the people I know than testing it now with another big group. So yeah, that's the reason.
Okay, thanks. And
it's a difficult market.
Yes, we know. Yeah. The second question, it's probably very broad, but I'll just ask, what is more or less a good marketing budget for your company? Like, how much would you need if you would like to work with you?
That's really nice. Like, I would like to have lots of money. We have worked with companies that have zero money, to be honest. In that case, you need a bigger period to actually get a little bit of a community and hype going. It takes more efforts. So most money is mostly spent then on our company than actually on other resources because of the time period. And we've worked with companies that almost have $500,000 to spend, even more, but just the cases that have been multiple times. Of course, it's really great to get $500,000 of money, and then you also see you get less careful with it. So for me, preferable, it's around the 50 to 100K, because then you actually still see the game going on as a small one, trying to get through the market. But that's from a personal level, because I think it's interesting. Is your game more niche? You'll probably need a little bit more budget than when it's a little bit more commercial. So the choice is up ahead. That's something to consider. The first company I worked with, we had very niche products, actually, turn-based strategy games that was steampunk-alike, and was pretty hardcore, actually. So with smaller budgets, it was really hard to actually get to the right community. But when you had them for your next game and your next game and your next game, which made your marketing money for next games a little bit cheaper. But that first moment to get them, well, I don't even know how much we spent, but I think it was like at least 300, 400K if it wasn't more. And that was for a niche one, PC.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Let's continue on a little bit, also talking about the influencers, drivers of change. We talked briefly about let's ask that first. So what you just explained was very interesting in terms of, is that now a business model where you basically say, actually, if I want to try and experiment with certain marketing techniques or certain platforms, like a mobile game, marketing for that, I would like to have like a bit of room to play. So I approach or do that with people close to me. I explain to them that this is something new I want to try. Let's take a bit of risk. Is that now like a model? You take, to experiment with new things, you take people close to you, and if you're doing things that you're pretty used to, or at least you know what you're doing, not so much the outcomes, obviously, then you take that as a product and just offer it to other customers.
I haven't really seen it as a model, but when you say it like that, yeah, probably it is. But
not a very conscious decision, perhaps.
Yeah, it wasn't a conscious decision. A conscious decision was, okay, we want to work with development studios. We want to work either with 80-20, 80% paid, 20% ref, or one ref a year. That were like choices we made on purpose, basically because we don't want to constantly be looking for new, constantly having to do acquisition to actually every year you need this amount of development studios to work with to actually survive as a company. We actually hope to make one successful that will actually be earning money in the back end as well via the ref. So a more calculated risk, so the 80% still covers your main costs. And no, I don't think the experimenting, I've always wanted 2-3 games at least to experiment with. And I'm just really lucky. I come from a family where my brothers design games as well.
I see.
And we have worked with a lot of I just know a lot of friends, everything for almost 10 years now. And with those, I'm just a little bit more, and explain it up front.
Let's try something new.
I want to try something new because I'm getting a little bit bored about the standard formula, and I don't feel it. I feel it's doing less these days, so I want to try something else. Are you open for it? And mostly they're open for it because there are people I know for very long. But some say no. I've had a few said no.
Okay, yeah, well, fair
and
enough.
some work, some don't.
Well, it's part of taking a risk. I understand that. Yeah. So what about influences of in your business and your organization? We talked a little bit about changing platforms, people implementing new strategies in Steam, for instance, that influence your company, your business, changing laws, privacy law. But you also mentioned people close to you giving you advice. How important is that? And what kind of people are they? What kind of advice do they give you?
Did I mention that?
I think you mentioned it. Yeah, like your father, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, who?
Who the hell?
Yeah, I think it's important. I myself started out in sports marketing, basically, before coming into game marketing. I think it's sometimes really good to see stuff outside of the game industry, marketing and business-wise, and see how you can implement that in your industry. My dad, for instance, he works at DAF, DAF Trucks. He's done a lot of startups back in the day from DAF, helping him. That's why I traveled a lot, such. So he has a lot of insight, and he's now advising some tech companies as well outside, giving them some, helping them as well on the startup and such. And as a daughter, of course, I try to get some advice as well. He's still working, so he doesn't have much time, but when he has time, he gives valuable lessons. And that's one, but we've also talked with, I don't know, I just come out of a really fruitful family, I guess, but a lot of entrepreneurs. Yeah. So my uncle, for instance, a nephew, a niece, they all tried starting up, and then I listened to the stories, asked some questions. We have some friends that have businesses, even with AR, for instance, and then we can just ask some questions, how they're working, how they're doing, what they're running into. Now someone's in the health, for instance, and how it's a friend of my brother, built really big company really quickly, or not that quick, but at least steep. And then we're just asking advice, how did you manage it? How did you manage with getting the people in, keeping an eye on your goal and such. Yeah, it's just very good to listen to also outside of the game industry, people, how they're developing their company.
Yeah, and how they might often maybe give you some harsh advice, or
and I'm not sure if they're really giving advice on how I should do the company, but they are like, what we do discuss is the troubles or the risks that we're scared about, and we're at a point that we're looking into, are we going to ask an investment to go quicker, or actually just going to stay like we are and then get people in, but it's a more calculated risk in that sense. And then it's really interesting to talk with the other ones outside of the game industry to see they mostly have the same struggles and the same issues, just another point of view, and it sometimes helps.
That sometimes helps. I can imagine that. Yeah. I think I'm out of time, aren't I? Yeah. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for all the insights already. I'd like to talk with you about the marketing campaign you did for Verdun, because it's a big game. Yeah. And you did some interesting marketing approaches. And what I feel, can we start with the beginning? Like, how did you start with them?
How I got in contact with them, or actually started with them.
You were already in contact, so you talked. And then what happened? Like, where do you start with your marketing campaign?
I always start saying I want to make a plan, so a marketing plan. So basically, and I wrote these lists down because I'm always jumping around in my whole. But basically, we start off with some research. We review the target audience when they have data. In their case, they did. We actually went through their Google Analytics. We went to the Steam Store analytics that they had, and tried to gather as much information about their habits in the game, as well as their store behavior.
Audience demographics,
like the standard stuff.
So what does it say you? What does someone's age or place of
it
living?
says their male, etc. But it also saw what we saw with them is that we actually saw a big drop at start when they start the game. It's pretty hardcore, so we see a lot of casual players just going out. But the ones that are staying, they're even there today. They're really playing a lot. They're playing at least once a week, twice a week.
So what does it tell you?
It tells me they're very engaged. They really want to know where this game is heading to. So transparent. You have to be really transparent to actually keep them. You actually have to try to involve them in your decisions. As they feel as being there every week that they're part of you, right. Basically, of your company. They've seen you grow, and they actually feel it's also because of them. So we appreciate them a lot. Those are things in our messages and in our way of communication that we take in consideration. We also know that looking at the Steam Hub numbers as well, that they're really engaged, but especially on topics about decisions. And then we sometimes get into flame wars because they're really actually invested. The designer as well. So they're really invested. Yeah. So when we say something, we're careful how we're saying it, and sometimes even massaging it a little bit in on the long run, than saying it one-on-one, we're doing this, and bye-bye, because then they're gone. No
surprises for them. That's important there.
Yeah.
So what else do you do?
Unless it's free content, and they're really happy.
They're really happy. But then you have this sort of demographic setup.
Yeah.
And then how do you approach them? What's the next step?
Well, in their case, we saw a few countries we could still had a lot of room, so and they didn't have much translation, so we worked on that one. We saw there was some interest in the historical elements they had in their game. So what we did is we built that out outside of the game. So inside of the game, we basically sat together and said, okay, everything we do right now in this game has to be as correct as possible. We're not going to do like funny stuff like zombies in their game or nothing. It's not going to happen, even though you can get in the Halloween sale. We're not doing it.
Because Verdun is a World War I game, basically.
So we wanted to keep it correct for the World War I. Right. We wanted to keep it respectful. So we've never done strange pictures with funny faces or whatever. We always try to be correct there. We did it in a different way. So what we did is on the social media, we were telling stories about the war. We were asking them what troops, if it was correct, this outfit or this outfit, educate them a little bit so that they knew this was an accurate game. We did quizzes so they would learn a little bit more, little ones. We did you knows about the World War I.
Interesting. So really diving into the World War I.
Yeah, and even with their second game, Tannenberg, we used names that were from the World War I. So we kept it really as real as possible. But
you weren't really selling a game then. You were more selling the content of the game there.
The gameplay, there were two selling points that they basically said. It was the theme and it was the frontline game mode. Right. And when I came on board, I said, okay, it's really nice. We'll explain the frontline game mode, but people can only experience its original and different if they actually experience it. Right. And for that, they first need to buy your game. And so that's why we took the theme up front, because it was still a pretty unique theme. These days it's Battlefield as well, and there are more coming, but at that moment it was pretty unique. So we made sure in our store banners, in our sentences, in every message that we made, that we mention it's a World War I game, not two. It was one of the first. It was a multiplayer, which was still pretty scary, as well as it need to do a multiplayer. We just basically put all our selling points as much as we could in the first look and the first sentence to actually enforce it. Yeah.
So how did you discover those? Like how did you understand that this sentence worked and this sentence doesn't work?
Testing. So when I got on board, they basically said, in a few months we're going to release. Can you help us? We're going to have an update next month, and then we're going to release in the summer. And I was like, oh, okay. I was just figuring out what I was going to do. And I said, but okay, with the update, I do want to do a campaign. I do want to start trying out some new stuff. So I wrote up the marketing plan. I talked with them. I asked them to change the logo, change a little bit of the store banners. Of course, we all do this. We're talking it together. It's not like you have to. So we were discussing it, that we would do more the World War theme. We would push it more forward. And from the first campaign, we actually saw more interest. And in the summer, we decided not to release, to actually do another campaign.
Why would you do that?
Because we actually saw the change actually got a lot of interest and more sales, daily sales, everything. So we actually saw we can actually polish the game a little bit more and work, because it was 100 years ago since the World War I started. And we're like, let's do something for the Memorial Day, actually, as a remembrance, and see if we can make the message even stronger.
And what was the message?
Well, that was really making an event on that day, talking about everything what happened that day. On social media, we were telling all about it. You could get a medal in game for just playing the game on that day. Stuff like that, like small stuff. And basically, and we talked with Steam and said, we're going to do all this, and this on that day. And it would be really nice if you could help us. In that case, Steam was a little bit different than it is these days. But if it really great to help us, like, show that we're doing this all for the community. They were really interested in what we were doing for the community. So they said, okay, we'll help you, because we're really happy that you're doing all this stuff. We had a whole website with all information about the World War I.
How does Steam help you?
They actually gave us a daily deal at that time.
A daily deal?
Yeah, which was really rare and didn't happen much.
So what's the daily deal? Can you?
It's a full day your game in sale. At that moment, it wasn't algorithm or nothing, the store. So you basically had your banner on the front page, going to almost everyone for 24 hours.
And that's a big deal.
Yeah, there's a lot of... If you don't have money to actually get people towards your game, and then a platform is helping you with their audience to show your game, it's the most valuable traffic you can actually get, because they're already on PC, they're already playing games. It already narrows down your targeting. Yeah. It's on the right platform. It's near the store button, so it's all good.
So get featured, that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, so at that time, we were really happy. I was really lucky, because before that, at the company I worked, we did a lot of community-driven stuff. We actually made newspapers and everything, which we actually even sent to players and stuff, which was totally all about that game. Puzzles, everything was in that newspaper. And they wanted to make it digital at the time to help it give to the community even easier. So they were really happy about the community stuff we did, and I knew that. And with this game, we just tried to do also community stuff, and that's why I pitched and got lucky that they wanted to help push it out. And at that case, like I said, it wasn't an algorithm thing. We were just really lucky with the contact, and we just knew that their sweet spot was doing stuff for your community and supporting your game for the long run, which few did, but still not everyone did it. And that also brought us to, so that went so good that they actually said, okay, no, we got lots of feedback from the players. We're actually going to work through their feedback, polish the game, because it's just not good enough to release. We then in the fall went to IGX London. We actually had no influencers at the time. It wasn't as big as it is today, but it was already getting there.
So what's IGX?
A game convention, an expo where we, it's not a really big one at the time, at least not. It's a little bit bigger these days, but still pretty casual, small. So you quickly can get in contact talking with the YouTubers or the streamers or the press. It's a little bit more friendly. I don't know. I like the event a lot, so I'm a little bit biased there. But there we got our first YouTube streams and videos and some streams, which we actually didn't have before, which opened up a new area, a new audience that would actually go to the game. So that was not a spike per se, but we did see more traffic, and we saw the daily sales climbing up a little bit more even. And with marketing, what we actually look at when we're doing a campaign or you're doing a sale or you're doing a release, you want to make sure that the bottom daily sale line when you're doing nothing doesn't go lower after one of these events, it actually needs to be the same or higher to keep the game healthy. So we were actually really happy doing that. So we only came up with more campaigns, basically. That came the Christmas truce, and so we actually continued on the whole set up the Remembrance Days, where they have 2-minute silence in the game, and that's something we've been continuing doing these last years, actually.
So we've talked about your involvement in the marketing campaigns and what all the things you came up with, and really understanding the core value of Verdun as a historical, accurate game, and portraying that in all your messaging. But then you also do analytics, right? Can you tell me a little bit of what that means and what it entails?
It's a process. If you, I'm gonna take it in 3 steps. You have you do the research before you even launch your product. It can help you also with design. For instance, know your target audience. We got a question: what is the most promising social media channel? It all depends on what's your product. Know your product, know your audience, know who you're selling to, then you know what social channels they reside.
Yeah, that they fit.
Yeah.
Right.
And then during the launch campaign, you can evaluate your marketing strategy design choices. And during, let's say, the playtime of gamers, you can evaluate what they do in your game to make design decisions to increase retention,
Extend their lifetime.
Extend the lifetime, have more features that fit your game.
Right. So what kind of metrics did you target or check when you were doing Verdun?
Verdun is mostly the time they spend in the game, with frequency, and what's
store analytics.
yeah, and upfront the store analytics, which channels come to the Steam store and what type of audience is that. If you know what type of audience is in your game, you can find enough information about their personal interest and tailor your game to fill their needs.
So if you would describe the audience of Verdun, how would you describe them, and how did you find out that they were these people?
Well, not to be like stereotypes, but it's mostly male, of let's say 30, 35 plus, that are interested more in strategy games than they really are in first-person shooters. It's a first-person shooter game element, but they like the more historical approach to the game itself. How
did your data tell that to you?
It's all about, I think, testing what works and what doesn't work. Even designers put up
A/B testing.
A/B testing within the game, also out of the game on the social media channels. Do you like this to be in the game or not? And that narrows it down.
Right.
Just to jump in, we have a lot of sleeping players that have the game and are not really playing it. But when we do some historical event in game, they would actually get back. It would be one of the retention things that you would see. Them getting back, and that's why you know that these event things, especially if it's fitting to the theme, it just made them to come back or even buy the game. There were people that's only bought the game for the Christmas truce, while it's actually not the best soccer game, or throwing snowballs is not as accurate or nothing as other games, but they just wanted to have that feeling and that experience.
New content like DLC, if they're historical accurate, you can see inactive players coming back to see the game or the elements that you put in there. And there are a lot of, let's say, key performance indicators. You have to choose them wisely to determine if it works or if it doesn't work for your game.
So we call these KPIs, right?
KPIs, yeah.
And so these key performance indicators, how do you decide, though obviously it's an iterative process and stuff, but how do you start defining them? Is it close to the game or more close to the customer, for example?
We have from each one.
Yeah, it's a dual approach. You can, first of all, it's like an educated guess. You put in KPIs and you're saying, and you have to define them really clearly. This KPI will tell me this and this about my player. And then you have to verify that also, because you can pull a lot of data out of your game, out of your marketing, but not everything provides you with the information you need. So you have to be very selective and very accurate on what you're tracking on data and analyzing.
When we make a campaign for whatever game, basically we sit together and we make a forecast on sales. We make a forecast on which channel strategically we've chosen that we wanted to do, and what we think we can hit there, or what percentage engagement, or how much the share of voice that's going to be on the market about your game. We try to hit on every area a goal for ourselves as team to proceed on. And sometimes you see you make it, and sometimes you don't, and then he actually needs to evaluate why.
Yeah, and then you take steps to improve that. So it's an ongoing process. It's not like, oh, I'm going to define a KPI, and if it's good, I'm going to leave it alone, and if it's bad, I'm going to change it. No, even when it's good, you can try to see why it's good. Why does it work for your game? Because you can get suggestions from other developers on what to track, but it might not work for your game. It might not work for your audience. It's very game product specific.
Well, thank you. I think we're out of time. I'd like to thank you so much for all the input and insights you gave, both in the development of Verdun's marketing campaign, as well as your own organizational structure. Really interesting, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.